Oops, I had my mute button on. Sorry about that, SHRM family. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Workplace Tech Spotlight. By the way, happy St. Patty's Day. Hope you all are planning some great fun activities for the weekend. My name is Guillermo Corea, Managing Director of SHRM Labs, SHRM's Workplace Innovation Lab. I'm your host for this series where we shine a spotlight on some of the most interesting future of work topics, innovators, and disruptive technologies. For those of you watching on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, please share this live stream and tag SHRM. You can use the hashtag SHRM Labs as well as Workplace Tech. So today we're going to discuss a topic that touches on employee recruitment and retention, one of the top issues HR is currently dealing with. Everyone knows employee wellness is one of the keys to attracting and retaining talent, but wellness benefit programs are restrictive and complicated. As reported by SHRM through our 2022-23 State of the Workplace report, labor shortages were still a top concern for 80% of HR professionals. 30% of HR professionals indicated their organizations had been effective at recruitment, but retention became a bigger challenge. Employees remain very disengaged going into 2023 and are substantially less likely to recommend their organization as a good place to work. More than 1/4 plan to look for another job elsewhere. Think about that. 1/4 of your employees are planning to look for another job someplace else. Add to this millennials and Gen Z thinking about their careers and what they expect from employers in a totally different way. So if employers want to attract the workers they need, employers have no choice but to adapt. Employers need to figure out how to personalize benefits for the 21st century workforce. And a great place to start is with the health and wellness of their employees, your employees. So joining us to talk about this topic is Jonathan Shooshani, CEO and co-founder of Joon. John, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the stage. Before we begin, how about if you tell the audience a little bit about yourself as well as what Joon is all about?
Awesome. It's great to be here, Guillermo, and thank you for having me, SHRM community. I'm the co-founder and president of Joon. I've worked at the intersection of wellness and technology for the past decade, and I am personally very interested in wellness. I'm constantly experimenting with different diet, movement, wellness that boosts my physical and mental energy and my well-being and performance overall. And a few years ago, my co-founder and I saw that companies everywhere were looking to invest in workforce wellness as a way to mitigate burnout, attract and retain talent, and boost employee engagement, but they were struggling to do so. So that's why we created Joon as an easy and flexible way that companies everywhere could invest in wellness for their people. And excited to talk to you today about how companies out there could think about personalization, about benefits communication, and as a way to really offer benefits that not just the small segment of employees use, but all of their employees use and engage with and appreciate.
Fantastic. So let's get right into it because I know we have a short period of time here. So, we're seeing a slower pace of growth, right? However, the labor market dynamics remain tight. In many ways, employees still hold the power to demand more from their employers, especially the highly skilled workers, right? The great resignation that started to lose steam last year, right? Although we have recession fears, right, the unemployment rate is still 3.6%. It's a tight job market for sure. So how can offering employee wellness programs be a competitive advantage in recruiting top talent?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, these health programs and benefits have been offered for, 30 plus years now. And the healthcare benefits are just limited in scope in terms of what meeting employees where they're at. We're all dealing with different parts of the wellness journey at different points in time. One employee might be focused on improving their mental health or struggling with student loan debt if they've just come out of college and are entering the workforce. Whereas another employee might be a caretaker for an older parent, or might want to focus on their nutrition or their mobility and movement. So these personalized benefits allow a company to speak to the individual needs of each employee, rather than taking a one size fits all approach that doesn't necessarily speak to every employee's specific needs. It's something that the modern worker is looking for. They're looking for a company to really go above and beyond and offer these types of benefits that allow them to thrive, both in their personal lives and as well as in their professional lives.
Okay. Based on what you guys have seen at Joon, right? How is it that how do employee wellness programs improve work performance and assist HR in recruitment and retention of employees? What would you say?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're seeing across the board is that companies are actually starting to put these types of benefits on their career pages. So it is becoming part of the conversation at the very early stages of recruiting. And employees are actively, when they're perusing career pages, they're looking at brands that are aligned, or they're looking at to work for organizations that are aligned with their values. So it's coming up really early in the conversations. And then I think we all know that happier, healthier employees, the data is out there that shows that those types of employees are more engaged, and they are more likely to show up to work with more energy. They're more likely to feel better in their minds and their bodies, and that they are more likely to perform better when it comes to work. And traditionally, these programs there hasn't really been a direct correlation between offering wellness programs and these things that I just spoke about, the engagement and the performance and the productivity. And that's because the programs have traditionally been used by a very small percentage of workers, because they didn't really appeal to every worker's needs and lifestyle.
Right.
When you offer flexible benefits and personalized benefits, all of a sudden you see the benefits utilization go from 1 to 10% to upwards of 70, 80, 90%, almost the entire workforce using the benefit. And from there, you see more satisfied employees, and something that you're offering, something that employees all across the board uh, appreciate and use. And this is especially important in today's modern style of work, where companies are more distributed and they're more diverse. You have employees all across the board. So you can no longer connect your benefits to a physical location. Most companies, or a lot of companies, can't. So rather than doing a one-off partnership with a gym in a specific geo region or with a specific vendor, employers are going to employees and saying, hey, we're going to give you this money. You choose what you want to do with it within these guardrails. And when you do that, it's pretty amazing at what can happen with how employees feel about the companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still, I'm old enough to still remember when, the gym pass, or, the gym benefit became available. And I remember it used to be, hey, now we have an agreement with Gold's Gym, and, you get XYZ, fee to be able to go to Gold's Gym or whatever. So and not, I'm sure that not everybody, would take advantage or something like that. Let me go back to, something very important that you kind of touched on at the very beginning, right? When you began talking about this issue, and that's kind of like around communication, right? You mentioned, that companies are now presenting their benefits on their careers page, right? And that's supremely important, right? For companies to be upfront about, what it is that they provide to employees, right? Do you think that communication of wellness programs is an issue that HR has not properly addressed?
Yeah, that's a great one. We actually did a webinar that we'll post in the comments if folks want to see it, all around how to effectively communicate benefits to employees and some of the gaps where companies sort of miss the mark. And that's also something that we are trying to solve for. So when you have benefits living in a bunch of different vendors and in a bunch of different places, it's hard for employees to even understand what they're getting from their employer. If you ask any employee, hey, do you know that your company offers X and Y perk or benefit? They're just like, they don't realize that they even have it. So first and foremost, it's putting everything in one place. So if you have learning and development programs, you have work from home programs, you have family care, you have health and wellness, you have mental health, is consolidating those benefits into one single dashboard makes it really much easier for an employer to communicate those benefits to employees and for employees to understand what they're getting. Then from there, it's meeting employees where they're at and not just sending an email from time to time, but actually getting help from the vendor to communicate these benefits to employees and having multiple touch points throughout the year where these benefits are communicated to employees and across channels. A lot of employees, for example, let's say engineers, they don't live in their email, they live on Slack. So you have to make sure that you're communicating these benefits in the place where employees are actually going to be able to see those messages. The last thing around benefits communication that we've noticed is we give our clients the option to do pre-recorded webinars as well as live webinars. And we've seen that when an employer participates in the live webinar, there's a much higher likelihood and correlation between the utilization of the program increasing because people are actually there, they're present, they can ask questions. And the best employers will actually offer some grace period after we have those webinars and say, hey, we just had this webinar on benefits. Here's 30 minutes where we're not going to book any meetings, where you can go out and actually interact with the benefits and try to use them. And if you have any trouble, come back to us or come back to this vendor with questions to make sure that you are utilizing the benefits. Two other things I'll mention on that is with Joon, and with benefits in general, but with our product and specifically, the way that employees use it is very unique and individualized. So the best employers will actually highlight what individual employees are doing to use their benefits. So Guillermo, we spoke about sort of before we went live that you're using Apple Fitness recently and that it's provided a lot of benefit to your life. So in a Slack channel, if employees are comfortable, the HR manager or admin can actually say like, here are some way that our own individual employees are using the Joon benefit. Guillermo is using it on Apple Fitness. John is using it on ClassPass. Jennifer is using it on horseback riding. And that then inspires employees to use the benefit in a way that's meaningful to them, where they're like, what, I could use it on that? Like, that's amazing. And they start engaging with the programs. The last thing I'll mention is a little bit more specific to our product, which is around reducing and removing friction from the experience of engaging with your benefits. And that's specific product decisions that we've personally made in order to say, okay, if you want to use these benefits, how do we make it as easy as possible for the employee? And that's in the way that we built our product. We've removed the debit cards that people might associate with HSAs and FSAs. We've removed the need to manually upload receipts to a dashboard and wait for someone to approve them. We've removed the need to shop through a specific marketplace, and instead we've opted to use card-connected technology in order to say, employees, all you need to do to engage with Joon is connect your credit card, connect your debit card, go out and spend as you normally would, and then Joon will work in the background. So there's a lot that companies can do from a benefits communication standpoint. And then it's also for them to choose the right vendor that is not adding unnecessary friction to something that traditionally sees low utilization.
Yeah, you know what? I am so glad that you touched on friction, right? Because that's I think that's one of the biggest issues that HR doesn't realize that they have on the table, right? So last week, we were all at SHRM Tech. It was our first HR tech event here in the US, an expansion from our India event that we've been doing over the past few years, right? and a lot of the panelists and some of our keynoters talked about the friction that there is because HR is really not up to date on the technologies that they're using. As a matter of fact, at one point, one of the keynoters said, "Hey, can everybody here raise their hands if you're still using fax machines?" And honestly, I was shocked at the number of hands that went up when he said that. Right. So clearly, HR needs to step it up with technology. And yeah, there are a lot of issues behind that, right? Budgets and whatever you want to call it, right? But HR needs to be there. It needs to be at the same place where their employees are, right? Employees have their phones, and that's what they view as like the latest and greatest technology, right? So HR definitely needs to step it up and be there. So you kind of touched on it a little bit. Let me come back to it just in case you have anything else you want to share around there, right? So employees are going to continue, to seek out employers that value flexibility and work-life balance, right? Two priorities that clearly spiked to prominence during the pandemic, and it's going to remain core to an employer's value proposition, right? So when thinking about things like that, right, why should personalization of benefits matter to HR professionals, especially when you consider what I just said?
Yeah, I think we focused a lot so far in the conversation on employee engagement, employee satisfaction, utilization, and employees actually appreciating what their companies are offering. But maybe I'll take a different angle at this point and just talk about getting the most bang for your buck. So if you're spending on a bunch of different point solutions and you look at you're paying, let's just say $5 a month or $10 a month for your EAP or your mental health solution, you're paying another $5 a month for your MSK solution. You're paying another X percentage for financial wellness or for fertility. You're stacking all these different point solutions. They don't talk to one another, so that it becomes harder to communicate them to employees. And then you look at the utilization and you're paying for all these products, but the utilization is like 10%. So part of offering these types of personalized benefits is actually it's more cost effective, because instead of paying the PPM or price per employee for all these different products, you could technically just pay a price per employee for one product and give the power of choice back to employees' hands, and instead see the utilization go from a low percentage to a very high percentage. So now you're offering something that is inclusive, that's equitable, that employees appreciate across the board. And that translates into a more engaged, happy workforce, because they're actually using the stuff that you've spent time and energy investing in curating for your people. And from an HR perspective, it also it reduces the admin time, because instead of having to talk to 10 different vendors, you can now trust one or two vendors, and it frees you up to do many of the administrative functions that you have on your plate. Depending on the size of your HR team, there's a lot more to do outside of just comp and benefits.
Right.
And
Well,
it gives
actually,
you,
so
yeah.
one quick comment there, because I know, from what our members tell us, right, and this is how we support, our members, right, because we're trying to elevate the HR profession, right, and to make them more strategic and efficient. So by taking advantage of these technologies, you're right, it frees them up from having to do admin tasks, and allows them to have more time to concentrate on more strategic activities or initiatives that they need to worry about. Very quickly, because we have a couple of minutes left here, are there any other valuable resources that you can share with our audience? I know you mentioned the webinar, right, that you guys have, and I think you guys are going to be posting a link to that in the feed. But any other resources that you can think of?
Definitely. Yeah. Another thing that HR leaders in our network have found valuable is a workforce wellness survey. So rather than just having to guess about what employees want or need, it's like actually ask them hey, would you rather have a mental health benefit, or would you rather have something that's focused on making your work from home experience more ergonomically friendly and delightful? So actually asking employees what they need, and in that survey, we also give HR leaders the ability to go from results to actually how you can implement and take action on what you're learning from your workforce. At the top of the call, you mentioned some really important and great statistics around the state of work and the state of hiring. We've seen a lot of stuff in the news recently about big tech companies and companies across the board reducing their workforces. But what we found in a recent survey with our customers, as well as the broader HR ecosystem, is that hiring is still on the up, and many teams are actually still bigger than they were pre-pandemic. And the headlines might be scary, but there's still a ton of jobs out there. And that's something else that we've put together, is a state of hiring that is going to be live on our website in the next 2 weeks. So employers can learn about what is going on in the world of work and how are companies thinking about talent needs. The last two things I'll plug are, one is our podcast, Well Built. So I'm the host of a podcast called Well Built. It's joon.io/podcast, where I talk to thought leaders at the that are founders and leaders behind companies that are redefining what it means to live well. And I think that podcast, the reason I love doing it is because it really gives folks an idea of how much is happening within the wellness ecosystem, from optimizing your sleep to optimizing your hydration to the benefits of cold water exposure or deliberate heat exposure, saunas and ice baths, to mental health and more. And for an HR leader to be responsible for keeping their finger on the pulse of all these different trends is a lot of work. But hopefully we can make it easier by introducing them to the top topics at this intersection. And then finally, the last thing I'll mention is I've been trying to kind of follow SHRM Labs lead and host similar types of conversations on LinkedIn with HR leaders as well as founders of HR tech companies, in order to similarly have a discussion about how we can build more resilient organizations and optimize for culture, optimize for employee thriving. So that's something else that folks can find on our website. It's joon.io/interviews, where I will speak to folks in the HR space as well. And I'll leave it at that. But if you have any other questions, or folks have any other questions, they can always feel free to follow me on LinkedIn or reach out, and we'd love to discuss and continue this conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. No, and by the way, speaking of cold water and everything, there's nothing like taking a cold shower in the morning, and it just wakes you up. So yeah, I highly recommend it to you, and anyone else out there listening. Hey,
and there's now a lot of data behind it too. There's a lot of research that's being done on what it does to your fat stores, your actual body composition, as well as your dopamine and your energy and your focus. And that's a lot of what we geek out on here. And I spend a lot of time sort of like being a guinea pig to these products and services, and hopefully we can make them more accessible to more folks across the board.
Fantastic. Well, hey, you know what? Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. So, John, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a great conversation. And for everyone else out there, we hope you all enjoyed it as well. If you'd like more information about Joon, please visit them at joon.io, right? That's your website, John?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you, SHRM Labs, for having me on. And yes, I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you all for tuning into the SHRM Labs Workplace Tech Spotlight. If you enjoyed this live stream, please share it using hashtags SHRM Labs, Workplace Tech, as well as SHRM. Visit us at shrmlabs.com to stay up to date, and we'll see you next time. Happy St. Patty's, and thanks for joining us.